we move to come out of executive session. We'll now move on to our action items. Action item number 1 is the approval of the October 1st, 2012 enrollment report. Is there a motion to approve by Dan, second by Chris? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Unanimous. Okay, Board of Ed bylaw update.
Sure. As we discussed in we discussed in the policy committee to change the wording in the bylaws to say that under the committees will consist of a chair and 2 other members. And that would be a change from a chair and 3 other members so that we can meet quorum requirements and get the meetings more meaningful. I make a motion to make that change.
Motion by Helen, second by Chris. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay, tentative agreement between the Board of Ed and the Torrington Public School administrators.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve the negotiated settlement with the administrators.
Second motion.
Second by John. Any discussion? Andrew?
I'd like to first state that I think that the negotiation team and the administration did an excellent job in negotiating this contract, yet I'm going to vote against this contract based upon what I see every day in the city of Torrington. The economic base of this community has rapidly, not necessarily rapidly, but has so depreciated over the last several years. For me to vote on any increase of any government employee's salary in this community would defy whatever little logic I may have, which is when the community's economic wealth and base is depreciating in the manner in which it has depreciated. I just don't see how I could say to people that they should be paying more property taxes when their property values are just collapsing in this town. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
All those in favor? Opposed? Okay. That was all yeses, Mr. Hurd. All right, approval of the 2013-2014 Board of Ed 5-year capital plan.
Make a motion to approve the capital plan as presented.
Second. Second right there. Any comments, Chris? Budget?
No, we need to do this to move forward with our projects for this upcoming year because we're on a tight deadline. So in order to get all 5 years, or in order to get this year, we need all 5 years. And are we discussing that? So we'll get into that. For now, it's just the 5-year plan this year. Soon.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, once we approve this plan, I mean, our money set aside for this already?
We have our.
I mean, when do, if we approve tonight, when do vertical shovels hit the ground?
The process is one where we have, in conversations with the city, moving forward, for example, with the roof project at Ford's, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, once we approve other action items, we'll be setting up the process to have that money transferred over, the city will transfer it over, and then we will allocate it in our next budget, from our next budget, and in essence reimburse the city, so they're fronting the money for us.
I see. I see.
I mean, generally, to answer your question, this is the 5-year plan that every year we have to put forth a 5-year plan. Traditionally, many items in the 5-year plan are consistently pushed off because there just isn't going to be the funding for them. The focus really is on this year, this first year of this 5-year plan, which will be next year. That's what we're planning on doing in the capital budget.
That's the roofing?
Yes, and that we're going to get to that on the next 4 items. It is, it'll be redundant after a while. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous? Okay, approval of the Forbes Elementary School re-roofing project. Yeah, Chris. Motion by Dan.
Thanks. I'll second.
All right, Dan, Chris. Discussion. This will go back to your question,
Yeah.
Paul.
So-
What happened, the state has somewhat changed the way they're doing projects. In order to make your application for your reimbursement,
Yeah.
the city now has to have designated that their portion of the money is in an account designated strictly to this project. You can't just say, yeah, and say it's in next year's budget. We're actually going to go to city council on the next item to request the city to take some of the contingency fund and fix it so that we can ask for our 74.8% reimbursement rate. You know, you have to say it's there. And when our budget passes, and we start July 1, we will basically take our chunk of that budget and give it back to the city. You know, they're just basically fronting the money till we get our budget.
Yeah, so what was the dollar amount? I mean, what do we need to offset? How's this going to impact?
Approximately 400,000.
We run the risk by not doing this now because of the procedure. The state being in the financial situation it will be, reimbursement rates are going to go down, right? So we want to act on this now. We know the roof needs to be replaced.
Understood. Fine.
We're trying to take advantage of our high rate.
Yeah.
Yep. Any other discussion?
Current roof has been here for almost the lifetime that it was built to serve.
Boy, it's right at its end of its life. All right, seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, unanimous? Okay, approval for the superintendent to request that city council set aside the funds for the Forbes Elementary School roofing project. This is us sending a letter to the city requesting city council to vote to set the money aside. Motion by Chris, second by Dan. Discussion.
This will be approved by council or finance?
The state says it has to be city council. So unfortunately, yes, Board of Finance is going to have to approve it so city council can approve it, but we have to have a letter from city council. Because the state recognizes city council as the governing board, not the Board of Finance.
No, makes sense.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. All right, agenda, action item G, approval to establish a building committee for the Forbes Elementary School roofing project. Our intent, okay. Motion by Ellen. Second, Chris. Our intent on this is to name David Becerra, our facilities manager, as the building committee. Again, you have to have a building committee named in order to apply for the money. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous again. All right, action item H, approval for superintendent to submit a financial reimbursement form for the Forbes Elementary re-roofing project to the state of Connecticut to file for our 74.8% reimbursement. Moved by Chris, second by, give it to her. She beat you, Dan, I'm sorry. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous again. Okay, financial statement.
Move to approve the financials.
No. Discussion. Andrew?
We're doing the health benefits as well.
Yes.
A couple of questions. One is, Why do we have different, we have two different, we have Anthem and then we have Cigna?
Yep, we still have Anthem for our dental. Yep, dental insurance is still through Anthem because Cigna doesn't offer dental, so that stayed the same. And I broke it out for July and August because claims that were still coming in hit Anthem, and it takes close to 90 days for Cigna then and Anthem to coordinate back out expenses. So you'll see a couple months of the July and August claims move off of Anthem and onto Cigna. It's just their procedure. But we still have dental through Anthem, so you'll always see that.
And then the second question is more of a general question of when we switched from Anthem to Cigna and we looked at different ways to self-insure, it was empirically looked at, i.e. you have a $100 medical expense, say at Charlotte Hungerford, and you have Anthem and they negotiate what they're going to pay for that service, say it's $80. Now Cigna may negotiate that same procedure for $70. How did whoever negotiated this and made the determination that Cigna was going to save us more money than Anthem, how were they presented that the negotiated prices that Cigna were going to be able to get for our employees was a better price than the price Anthem was going to, and net out a better.
Right. When we went through, we had a committee, and when we went through and interviewed the 3 different insurance firms, they did take that into account, and they did talk to us about it. And how they described it is when they negotiate with the providers in the hospitals, that is built in to our rate that they give us. That's how you remember it?
The almost $2 million savings that we had between the Anthem price and the Cigna price was Cigna's reduced rates that they could get us through doctors and hospitals. That was where the bulk of the savings was. The administrative fee for the whole contract is only a few $100,000. So I mean, they made penny changes there, but it was really insignificant. The bulk of it came in what the reimbursable, what the payment rate is for each carrier to each facility or provider.
Right.
So they were, Cigna was able to say, we can get you an MRI for $1,100, whereas Anthem is $1,800 or whatever. And that's where the $2 million in savings came.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That, and Cigna believes that they can improve the health of our employees, and we have a wellness stipend, if you will, of $10,000, $20,000 total that we're splitting with the city, and we're offering wellness seminars for our employees. So that coupled with the savings.
And it's nice that they told us they actually could negotiate that 20% better pricing structure for our employees. But how do we validate that from a month to month, 6 months, a year? How do we actually be able to go back and actually document that MRI that Cigna got us for $1,000 and Anthem was saying was $1,800?
I see every single claim that comes to the district for every single employee.
Right.
I mean, You get
a lot.
I mean, so I can see what they're charging
And
and
you can see
paying.
what Anthem would have gotten us as well?
What compared to the past.
Okay, and you do see those?
Yep, every month it comes through. Yep, it's a booklet of everything, all the claims.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the financial statements? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None, unanimous again. Consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Ellen.
Second.
Is that Carl? Gosh. All right. Any discussion? Yes, Andy.
Now's a good time for me to ask this question and see if someone at the administrative level would actually answer this. Say, for example, I see Johnny Palumbo is on this consent agenda, and I don't want Johnny Palumbo to be, who's the teacher of foreign languages, and I don't want him to be there. This is my opportunity to tell the administration that I'm not going to consent to her hiring of Johnny Palumbo. No? If we don't consent to this, what happens to these people? Jobs. You're nodding your head saying, no, that's not true.
Well, we can't. We hire.
I understand you hire, but
Superintendent
we approve all of these.
But
So-
not one by one.
Yeah, I think we do.
Well, we used to in the past go through them almost one by one, but then consent agenda just became a lump sum. If there was an objection, I believe that they could ask to do them individually, and they could,
Then you have to get an executive session.
to discuss why.
Yeah.
If we wanted to discuss it.
Yeah.
If not, we could just
Well, the big-
reject Johnny's,
You can't,
Well,
you can't
do
cherry
one.
pick, you can't cherry.
what's that?
No, the problem, if you said that you had an objection to the consent agenda, you can't tell us, you can't say, Johnny, what was the name? Palumbo, okay. You can't say and single him out. You would have to say, you have an objection to this, we need to discuss it. We would then go into executive session because we would have to notify that person, and then that person would be moved to the next month so that they have a right to either hear it in public or to be here for the discussion. And then we would have that discussion whether they wanted it in open or executive, and then we would move forward. But you do have the right to say that you don't agree with something
Yeah,
on here.
I just wanted to be understood that we as a board, even though we don't actually hire any specific individual, that's the superintendent's job, we can block any hire of the superintendent.
I'll check this, Andrew, but I believe in recent conversations with Shipman and Goodwin that, and I'm not 100% sure, but this is what I understood from their conversation, and I'll check it for you, was we can say that we're unhappy, but if the administration can then say they're the best qualified and hire that person anyway, because we really only evaluate the superintendent, and then we would then say, how's that person doing? Johnny's failing, Johnny's not doing well, kids are all dropping out of Johnny's class, and then we would use that as our background or our data for our evaluation of the superintendent. In other words, we can recommend to the superintendent, you could say, I really don't think that this is a good hire, and we as a board could let's say we don't agree that it's a good hire, but the superintendent can still hire that person because it is their sole job to do the hiring, and then we say, told you so, told you so, told you so, and then at the end of the year, you have grounds to either not approve the rehire or the extension of a contract, or however your superintendent's contract is written.
I'd like to know.
I'll get further information on that, but yeah, that was the understanding that I had on it, but I'll definitely refresh on it, because it was a little while ago. Okay. Any other discussion? Chris?
So just so I understand, tonight, if someone had an objection to an item on this consent agenda, it holds up everyone else, because you can't identify the one person to remove.
Yeah, you're right, it would hold up the whole consent agenda, because then you would identify.
Can I offer something?
Yeah.
What's happened in the past in the situation, it's expected that if somebody's gonna have that objection, they know that going into the meeting, and then before you approve before you approve the evening's agenda, you make a motion to modify, to explain that you have an objection with a certain blah. So you wanna add an executive session at the beginning to discuss the consent agenda. And you go into executive session, blah, 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 then you would come out, modify it, and you have to go through each of these steps to be, legal schmiegel, that's how it's done.
Can you identify those?
Well, in executive session, then you don't have to discuss why, I mean, again, it's that really
Okay,
dicey area.
okay,
You
I
can't
see.
critically say, I strongly object to this person being in this, and I have my grounds and blah, blah, blah. So I'd like to pull that name off this consent agenda for consideration next month. And then theoretically, the administration would do that. You know what I mean? And that's how you have to do it.
Yeah, we'll get, I'll talk to the Rich Mills tomorrow, and I'll get an answer. We'll
We
fire it
should
up.
really know the procedure.
Right.
Not that I have
Right.
any specific person,
Yep.
but if we know the procedure and
We'll-
something does come up, then we can do,
We will get-
like Paul says, step by step correctly.
Yep.
Well, it's too late for some of them anyway, because these are fall sports in a few cases.
Okay. All those in favor of the consent agenda? Opposed? We have one opposed. Mr. Rivera. All right. We move on to action item K, approval of THS oversight panel.
Like any good teacher, and even like the dead one on Fast Times at Richmond High, I have a handout. It's coming around, and as soon as it gets around, we start to talk about it. Read it over for a minute, please, and then we'll start whatever discussion might be necessary.
No pictures, John.
None at all. Simple declarative sentences as well, not much to argue. Well, people will find things, I'm sure. It's been going on for a while. It started in summertime, I guess, when we were talking about what we might want to do over the coming year. And this has been on the agenda as a future item, and then as a present item, and sometimes even as an appropriately spelled item. And now it is finally here. And it starts once the board approves it. Questions?
Well, do we get a motion to approve the THS oversight panel by Helen, second by Dan? Now we'll go into discussion.
We're going to vote on this,
Yes.
and I'm going to vote against this for several reasons. One is just the time parameters of, we've been on the board long enough, Paul's been on the board even longer. Maybe he agrees, maybe he doesn't, but you start seeing this type of committee set up, and it takes forever in terms of realistically getting anything done. If we think there's problems at the high school, that's why we have a superintendent that the board holds responsible for everything in the district, and we should be able to freely, as board members, communicate however the proper channels are, what we hear is going on right and wrong at the high school, and ultimately, whatever, even if you're successful at putting this oversight committee together, it's still ultimately the responsibility of the superintendent in relationship to the board. And I don't think we need to wait a year and a half before we can start giving the superintendent some new or modified marching orders of what is perceived and what is actually taking place at the high school. I think if we have problems at the high school, this board should be acting on it as a board to articulate what we think is wrong going on at the high school and addressing it to the superintendent and evaluating the superintendent based upon the superintendent's ability to deal with whatever shortcomings are actually taking place at the high school today. To put it off for this long with some group of people, I think we do a disservice to the high school. I think we don't handle our duties as board members to deal with problems that take place not only at the high school, but all the schools and all the needs of the kids, that we need to deal with it in a more direct manner, in a more timely manner, and I think that's where the discussion should be, not in setting up some feel-good group of all sorts of shareholders in the community. We're the ones who are responsible for the school district. Superintendent is the one who we hold responsible for getting the job done. And that's my feeling.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm curious, John. Board goal number 1 is looking to align, as we discussed, 6 through 12, make it basically one school, 2 buildings. And, that to me is where we really need to put our emphasis. Is this kind of the fact gathering? Is that how you're seeing this, the fact gathering committee that will inform this series of decision making?
I've always thought we need to start with facts. We think a lot of things, we think we know a lot of things that we don't necessarily have any reason for saying or believing. And when I saw that goal fully amplified in the packet for this month, I said, yeah, this is something that would be a part of this.
Right, okay, yeah, and I would support it based on that. So basically, you want to, and I think we need an ad hoc committee to do it in. In other words, if this is really tied to get the data, data mining for this goal number 1, which to me is really the name of the game here. It's really streamlining administrative functions. Like so many people, safety, security in a building, we got to get a handle on that, and it can't be just, well, tell the superintendent to get, we can't ask this group of administrators to fix the problems, the systemic problems that we have in our system that have been growing for reasons good and bad, for reasons that could have been controlled, and for reasons that could not have been contained, okay, that are a function of state statute, federal intervention, a whole host of things, changing demographics, a whole litany of things that have, created a system that is dysfunctional. And you can't expect a superintendent and her staff to get a handle on these things. It's just too broad. So I think the goal was designed to really look at the whole picture, 6 through 12. And we can't do it on a month-to-month basis, having an agenda item on Wednesday nights. It can't get done that way. It can't get done through school improvement. It can't get done through budget. It's bigger than that. And so I think that's exactly why you create these ad hoc committees. And if this is the point, the vanguard of really implementing goal number 1, as John has said, the first step is get the data, get the facts. What do we really know? What do we really guess? And so on that basis, I will definitely see. I think, I'm not sure if Andrew's going here, but I don't see this as separate. Then I see this as absolutely an integral part of goal number 1. And to that end, I would support it.
The timepiece, the timepiece was to, it's going to start in January.
Yeah.
And it cannot exceed the beginning of the next budget cycle, because that's where the money has to come from to fund all this. There's no way to have it done for this budget cycle.
No way.
So, it's unrealistic. So we could say August 1st, but realistically, it's at the beginning of the budget cycle where it's gonna come in. So we wanted to give ourselves the time, but at the same point, give John, as we said, it has to have an end. So the end is, we're already at the beginning of this budget cycle, so within one budget cycle, we have to be ready. John has to have, all his ducks in a row, and we're ready to assess it. And that was for the time.
I also would like to clarify, it's not to find things that are wrong. It's to really assess everything, what is right, what is wrong, what needs help, what doesn't need help. It's just all encompassing.
My only question is, obviously, with scheduling, it's rather difficult, but I would assume you'd have to spend some time within the building during the course of the regular school day. It's an interruption in people's lives, I understand, but it is their willingness on the part of central office as well as the building-based principal to help this committee spend the time they need during that school day.
I'm expecting a lot of cooperation from the high school community. I'm not talking about they totally came out of it. I'm going in looking for whatever people want to tell me.
Okay. That sounds perfectly reasonable. New information direct from the source on the ground.
I think it'll also allow for when we look at education reform and the expectations coming out of the state, and, how do we blend all of that so we meet those expectations, but yet keep the focus on our students, their needs, and how we can provide them with a quality education.
All right, all those in favor? Opposed? One opposed.
Thank you.
Good luck. Okay. Comments for the good of the order. Just as a note, there will be a special meeting for approval of the educational specs for Ford School re-roofing project. It's going to be held on January 30th. There is currently a budget meeting
Yes.
that night, so everyone, we just stuck it in front of it. We have, as a board, we have to approve the educational specs of the roof, so that all the kids that are going to learn on the roof will have the specs. Paul, anything?
Oh, yeah.
All right. John, anything?
Yeah. Short. I'll be short. Let me go first.
All right, go ahead.
When the gang from Hartford was here, or Sherwood Forest, or wherever they were from, telling us how they didn't have enough money to give to the schools because they had to give it to other schools who needed it more, and they talked about priority schools and access schools. The latest CABE magazine that came this week has a list of what some of those alliance districts are doing with the money. Interesting article, if you, just as a follow-up to that session we had in August.
Chris? Paul?
This is, I sent an email out before, regarding the sick days, reported sick days and possible sick day abuses. And first of all, kudos to the Personnel Committee for raising this issue and giving it, I think, the attention that it deserves. And as my old colleague here, after many, many years, this has been an ongoing problem. And I would like to see this addressed specifically at the next meeting. I know we didn't have time at this meeting, but I would also like it to be, I have some very specific proposals to make in regard to getting a handle on this. And they come out of 10 long years of listening to 10 years of administrators telling me that they were going to get a handle on it. And it just seems to me when I read an article like that everything that we try to do in this district, none of it matters. None of this matters. Core curriculum, no child left behind, race to the top, skiing stuff, none of it matters if you don't get qualified, competent teachers in front of kids for extended periods of time, period. And this problem, if it turns out that in point of fact there are abuses here, points to a general malaise. And what it does to me is it just sends a signal to everybody within our district, including the students, that basically, expectations are kind of rubbery, they're kind of soft, they don't mean anything, that, we are the Torrington Board of Education. We are charged and tasked with setting the rules and administrating this district and spending our taxpayers' money wisely for the purpose of educating our children as best we can with the money we have. And that cannot be done in an environment where people who are in leadership role model positions to these students can allegedly just bend the rules at will, you know? I'm tired of talking about reasons for student absenteeism and tardyism when we have alleged abuses by our staff on a regular basis, year in and year out and year in and year out. I'm tired of talking about closing achievement gaps and raising student achievement when we can't get the people that we pay to teach our children to show up and teach our children. So to that end, at the next meeting, I have several very specific immediate proposals, recommendations, how this board can address that problem in a very clear and direct manner that I think after many years is about the only way that we can get a handle on this. So that's actually items for upcoming agenda, but it was also comments for the good of the order. And with that, I won't repeat it, but I'm suggesting that we add this as a very specific agenda item next meeting, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Are we going to have a more comprehensive, as a board, look at the CMP and CAPS test results that were published in the newspaper? Was it planned? The ones that
Presented, those were not capped in CMP. This is new school performance index and district performance index, which we shared, I'm trying to think, October?
is
We already shared those results before they became published and how it was achieved, how the state designed the performance index.
was it 67+%
It's not a percent.
that they stated for Torrington High School? How was that percent?
The PowerPoint's on our website. It was shared at the October meeting. They're not percents, it's an index. And it's comprised of 9 separate factors, including scoring related to CAP, to math, reading, writing, and science scores, and then also a demographic breakdown by free and reduced lunch, English language learners, race and ethnicity, and so on. There's 9 separate categories that factor into developing this indices.
And what they did was they took the scores from the past 3 years, or that they developed, how they developed it through these 9 indicators. And
Baseline.
Yeah, and divided it and got us a baseline of where we're sitting this year, and also gave us a number of how many points we have to improve for next year for each school.
I didn't realize that Torrington High School, for whatever reason, was at 67.8. That's just right at the bottom.
Of this
Of
region,
proficiency.
of this, no. Proficiency, yes, because proficiency begins at 66.
It's not
It's not proficient, yeah, that's
It's
right.
about movement between the bands.
No, but he's saying the different.
Okay.
Proficient from 66 to 88 is considered in the proficient band.
The state is a full year out from designating other categories of schools. Eventually, there will be 5 categories of schools, and thus far, the only ones that have been publicly announced are the bottom categories, the turnaround schools, the review and the focus schools. And we're not in any of those categories.
And the schools of distinction.
I guess my concern is that the way the articles came out this week was not favorable to Torrington High School, it wasn't favorable to the school district in general.
Not when they're comparing us to school, no, when they are comparing us to the schools that surround us. It isn't, because we are not one of the small rural school districts that surround Torrington. We are not working with the same student population.
But the goal is to get over 88. So it doesn't matter what schools we're surrounded by, they want all schools to be at 88 or better.
Correct.
And we're so far away from it.
But for next year, can't remember off the top of my head, Joanne, what's your goal for next year towards the 88?
69.
69, so that's the goal for Torrington Public Schools. The growth that we have to show among our 10th graders is, it'll be 69 is the target number we have to reach and achieve for next year.
Which is an index that replaces the 100% of students at proficient by 2014 that was embedded in the No Child Left Behind legislation. So in adapting these new Connecticut state metrics, these are in place of the federally mandated metrics that were attached to the No Child Left Behind legislation.
So just everything is constantly in flux. Meaning we hear these, we you know, you've been on board long enough, you hear, well, we're gonna do this within 2 years, and then 2 years comes, well, we changed that grading metrics, and we're gonna try something different, and then we'll go another 2 years.
Well, it's the way the state is measuring student performance. It's
I understand
Oh,
that,
okay.
but I'm saying as a board, you know, we try to get some type of not a non-variable, something that's consistent, that we can look at year in, year out, and actually just try to evaluate ourselves, our teachers, our administrators, the school district, as this is a constant that we are going to want to achieve year in and year out to measure ourselves. And every time as a board member, it's always some excuse, some reason why what we're looking at really isn't the true measure of progress in the school district or not progress.
It's not a matter of truth, it's how the state is going to measure academic progress for students. And in this case, they have changed the way, they're no longer saying 100% of all students will reach goal on CMT and CAPS. Now they're saying this is where your district is performing at this time, and next year we want to see growth to reach this point. And that you have to reach that growth in, as Susan said, in 9 categories.
Right. Well, you know, Andrew's right. Every time the board or the community starts setting up a yardstick to measure by, we get given a new yardstick. And then when you get used to the new yardstick, they turn around and give
We're
you a
not
new
even going to
yardstick.
have CAP and CMP scores.
It's
Right.
really all of the same information. We collect
Yes.
all of the same information that goes into calculating the SPI and the DPI, the School Performance Index and District Performance Index, currently with CAP and CMT. It's the same exact information, just a different formulation
Well-
that the state feels is more fair to give credit for students who are moving from below basic to basic, basic to proficient, proficient to gold. Still the same tools, still the same disaggregation of data, but they've reorganized it in a way that they feel is more fair than saying 100% of the students will reach a specific fixed target.
That, I grossly disagree. I tremendously disagree. I think the reason they changed the paradigm, I came in at the beginning of No Child Left Behind, objected to it then. The reason they changed the paradigm was precisely because their paradigm was doing exactly what they planned for it to do, okay? Which was to show that schools are failing. That's what it was designed to do. It's to basically, not designed to improve that, it was designed to goad boards of education and administrations and teachers unions and parents and everybody else into higher expectations for student achievement. And it did that, and it had teeth in the law. The teeth was that after failing adequate yearly progress, X number of years, the state reserved the right to come in and replace the boards, replace the administrators, replace the teachers, okay? That's what that body of law was done. It had teeth, and it was targeted for a really specific result. It was result driven. Over a period of a 10-year span, schools failed in such catastrophic numbers that they lost the will at the state level to actually enforce what it is they set out to do. They got cold feet, they are gutless, they are spineless, and now instead of admitting that, well, it is true, and they're leaving 5,000 kids in Torrington, and I don't know how many other thousands of kids across the state with basically with a bag of tricks, okay? And they're gonna replace it with a new paradigm called Common Core, which is why you hear me, the frustrated old board member, railing against this meeting after meeting. Because I guarantee you, as much as you want to believe this, because you still have the faith, because partly that is your job and your career, I don't have the faith anymore. I don't have the faith that what they are asking us to do will deliver. What will deliver is what John Kisco, I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, John, but with every teacher that I know who I consider to be a really good, solid teacher, every professor that I knew at Amherst, what they would tell you is that you put good teachers in front of kids for extended period of time and people will learn, kids will learn, okay? And everything is just smoke and mirrors to avoid the fact that that's going to cost a bunch of money, that you're going to have to deal with social issues, tremendous social issues in comprehensive schools like we do, but you're not going to deal with them in the classroom. All of these psychologists, everything that we saw from Beth Robbins today, we're doing social services in our school. Social services, because that has become the main thing, is getting kids in a frame of mind where they know that they are expected to show up at a certain time and do a certain thing. Okay? All of these dysfunctions we're treating through our school system instead of putting our money into teaching reading, writing, arithmetic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This, you know, so what, at the end of the day, Torrington Board of Education, if it wants to improve education in the city of Torrington, is going to have to think for itself. We're going to have to set our own standards, our own goals. We're going to have our administrators know what our goals are for these schools. And then we're going to have to basically figure out ways of doing this better than what we're getting. If we just march to the tune of whatever the state is railroading down on us right now, I guarantee you, in 4 years or 8 years, you'll be the angry old frustrated board members doing exactly what I'm doing right now. And 5,000 kids will be left in the lurch, okay? I put my kids through this system. I don't want to see other kids. Not that there weren't great things. There are plenty of great things in the school system. But it was because we had teachers and administrators who were doing things their own way, quite frankly, okay? Because they were just damn good educators, and that's where they got their good education. But as a system, we got major problems. We cannot expect the state and this whole thing to figure it out. We're going to have to think for ourselves moving forward. So, that's my comment for the good of the order.
Okay. All right, Fiona had a comment for the good of the order. She's been receiving a lot of questions on the Ed Connection lunch program that some of our elementary schools have been running out of lunch materials by the last lunch shift, and the selections available to the kids are very limited. So if you can't eat a certain product, there's almost nothing left for you to eat. And the other concern is that we give a 30-pound first grader the same portion as a 100-pound fifth grader, and the fifth grader's hungry. Okay?
I will address that with the connection.
That was her question. The other question that I had for comments of the good of the order was back in our July 18th meeting, the board passed an action item for an RFP for IT services. Just wondering where we stand on that moving into this budget season.
Mr. Chair, if I may
Yes.
answer that question. We are in the process of redoing what was originally supposed to be the RFP that I have been assisting to work on. Some new developments have come to light about where the district stands from a hardware-software integration standpoint. So the scope of the contract is going to shift in what the RFP reads, so that it is broken out into one segment to research the design currently implemented within the district, as well as the district's goals for how to implement the next 3 years when we have to go to the Common Core standards, and break that off so that within the RFP, they know they will not be able to bid on any hardware if the company bids on a services contract for us. So the area is entirely separated out.
Okay, so it's in progress?
It is. Short answer.
Yeah, well, no, I just, it
But
was,
yes, long-winded, I know.
unfortunately, I cleaned my pile of these and I was going through them and I said, geez, you know, so now I can see the floor in my room again. All right, committee reports, Personnel Committee.
Personnel Committee had a very good meeting. We have seen wonderful progress from high school in regards to using PowerSchool to take attendance for classes, so the policies are moving forward wonderfully. We did, as Mr. Cavaniero so greatly showed, was we have begun to see a pattern for some absentee days, and the shocking one was in November when we saw a very distinct pattern for professional development days, when there were significant numbers of individuals who were sick for a day, on the day that they really were supposed to get their professional development and training. So, second month of keeping these types of records, we will continue to keep a very close eye. And as Paul suggested, as time moves on, we have more data and we start to see patterns developing in a regular frequency. It may become time for the board to sit down and look at exactly how this is being addressed and how to deal with these issues.
Chair, on the professional development, I'm not positive how the contract's set up or what's mandated or what's not mandated, but just hypothetically, if the teachers were finding professional development somewhat, I don't want to use the word distasteful, just not so-called beneficial to their liking, is there some way that we would just say, fine, no more professional development on those days, we're just going to give class time?
Ironically, when we were in the TEA negotiation, one of the things that the teachers did ask for was more professional development.
Okay, well, we got
They actually wanted
I'm really looking to show up.
Now you know why.
Well, there was a push from the negotiating committee there.
I guess they figure if they have more professional development, more days they don't have to show up, right? So,
It's something that maybe needs to be looked at by the administration, whatever.
Can I just to clarify my one thing about this whole issue, I sort of overspoke, but one thing that also bothers is not just that kids aren't getting this, but that beginning with the governor on down, you know, with this look at against systemic failure of public education, we're pointing at teachers. Everybody's painting them with one brush, and it does need to be said. My kids had some great teachers, and we all know there's plenty of really good, committed teachers who are the best, you know, who are in the greatest tradition of that profession in this school system. We've all been exposed to them, we all know them, okay? And part of what happens when you get just, you know, people who abuse those privileges is it then lends to the general public saying, oh, teachers are doing this, and it's a tremendous disservice, and it's also basically very much counterproductive to what we're trying to accomplish here. So it's not just that. So the more we can get detail what you're trying to do, and like I said, I have a specific proposal next meeting. But with this issue, I think it will help both in terms of controlling what is wrong, but also in making the public understand that this is all just a very small portion of what is otherwise a really, you know, professional and committed staff that we have here. So
We'll keep going. School improvement.
we're just going to continue with this small learning community, developing that idea.
Budget.
Gearing up for budget. The only thing besides things that we have covered in the meeting itself would be taking a closer look and trying to get a better visual aid that shows the expenditures and tracks better special education. That breaks it down, that's just not a line item, that it's examining, you know, students in the district, how much are we actually saving compared to how much that teacher that we had to pull in, et cetera, et cetera. So we're working on that. I think it'll make it easier when we go through the budget season.
Excellent. Policy.
We discussed everything tonight, the two first reads on policy 6156 and 6102, and then the bylaw revision.
Okay, grievance committee has no report. Ed Connection update.
Ed Connection, a couple things. Board of Directors meeting was a teleconference always is in December. Lasted 7 minutes, Mr. Chairman. You might want to call and ask for tips on that. And we got all our work done. And also, I went to the Policy Council meeting yesterday morning and brought up our question about applications for free and reduced lunch. And she says it's easy. They send social workers into the homes, and then she laughed. But that, I guess, is the way they get those forms back, is the social worker makes a home visit, and among the things the social worker discusses is this form. Here, fill it out, I'll help you if you need it, and then takes it with back to the place. I got lots more social workers will get those forms.
Okay. Items for upcoming agendas will be financial statement, committee reports, opinions, options, of education for secondary students, capital projects. We're going to have a referendum discussion. We're going to discuss the solar project at Ford School. We're going to have a discussion item on sick days. Any other items for upcoming agendas? Future meetings. Personnel Committee, January 9th. Budget Committee, also January.
Mr. Chair, we will be changing personnel committees towards the end of January instead of January 9th.
Do we have a date for that yet?
Not yet, that will be forthcoming.
Okay, Personnel Committee meeting later in January. Date to follow. Budget Committee meeting January 9th. Regular Board of Ed meeting is January 16th. School Improvement is January 2nd. And Policy is January 2nd. Motion for adjournment. Dan, second. Carl, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay, we're out.